Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. I'm your host, Angie Grandt, and I am just so incredibly excited to share this space today with Amber Plant. So, Amber, welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited. So Amber, I'm just gonna jump right in because I just can't wait to hear your story and what you want to share with our audience. Yeah, tell us what led you to where you're at today in life.
Yeah, so I've lived for 32 years, so I have quite a long story, but I experienced trauma in my adult life. So I grew up my childhood was amazing. I had great parents, and, my life was pretty set out for me. I feel like most of my life. And I started my career in marketing, actually. I started at a marketing agency. And I was so excited to just jump into the field and just do a really good job and was very eager to learn. And I feel like over the course of the 3 years that I worked there, it kind of started out really good. And then I just started to decline and ended up having to quit with burnout. And I remember I remember so specifically during that time when I was going through burnout that I just knew that the way that I was living and the way that I was moving throughout the world just wasn't working for me anymore. I was a huge people pleaser, and I spent a lot of time trying to do my best job for everyone else and kind of, put my needs and wants aside. And I also feel like a lot of my past conditioning played into that as well, like really not feeling like I could quit. And, I just my logical brain was like, you can't quit, like you don't have a plan. And but my mental health just got to such a bad place that I unfortunately had an altercation with a coworker that caused a lot of trauma. And then, in addition to the mental health and the burnout, I really had no chance but to just quit. And so I left and I went to a psychiatrist, and she pretty much told me that I either needed to go on meds or just like complete my or quit my job completely. And I just kind of knew that it was time to go. And so I left my corporate job. I started my freelance graphic design business. And then 3 months later, I got pregnant with my son. And I had a very difficult pregnancy, a traumatic birth, and 9 months of postpartum depression.
Wow.
So basically, my trauma just kind of compounded over the course of like 2.5 years. And finally, I decided that, well, I ended up going to a therapist. She's like, I really think you would benefit from trauma therapy. But she's like, you don't want to really stress your body out while you're pregnant. So, once you're done, like, sign up for trauma therapy. So I ended up doing that afterward and then spent about 2.5 years in talk therapy. And there's so much that goes into this whole thing. But I'll tell you one story just to kind of give you an idea of like the headspace that I was in. So, after I had had my son and I was going to trauma therapy and healing, and I was trying to work in my business part time, without childcare, which was the worst idea ever. I would go to the gym every day because for 90 minutes, my son could be cared for and I could just really focus on healing, not just my body, but also my mind. And I just remember going to the gym and I'm getting emotional, but I just remember it being just like a sacred place for healing where I just was able to reconnect with God and the universe and just really understand, like, just really feel like I could actually start healing. And this dark place that I felt like I was in, like, there was an out. And so, fast forward to now, I, my business has changed and I have moved. Well, I've pivoted my business into coaching, and it's really to help women trust their intuition over anything. And for me, what was kind of the turning point was I went to therapy and I did that for 2.5 years. And I could not figure out what the missing piece was because I would get like a certain amount of way with progress, and then something in my experience would happen where it would just completely take me out emotionally. And I couldn't quite figure out, like, do I have depression? Like, do I have mental illness? Like, I don't understand, like, why I can't get traction. And when I discovered that I could tap into my intuition every single day and be guided by my higher self, that is when things started to change. And I am so passionate about helping people understand that we are not meant to come here and be put into society, our family, our friends, just their box, right? Like they have all of these predetermined boxes that we feel like we have to fit into. But what I realized is my life got to a point where the way that I had been operating for 30 years just completely stopped working. And I just had to do something differently. And all of the answers came when my intuition told me that I was in the driver's seat and that what I decided and what I wanted out of life, that it was my choice. And because so many years, and my husband, like, he would get so mad at me, but I would make a decision about something, but I had to have like a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth witness from either the internet or a family member, a friend, or whatever to make a ding decision. And now I just, whatever my intuition says, no matter the shock factor, I
Wow.
do everything I can to follow that because it has brought me to a place of just complete self acceptance, peace, and really transformation because I just felt so stuck. And what's crazy is that, ever since this is more than just, I mean, it's more than just a business. Like, this is my life mission. And I want to get this message out to every single person that I can because I I just know, and especially when I was in like my darkest place, that it's so hard to see that you're the problem, right? It's so
Yeah.
hard to see that Because like, back then it was like, oh, it's my coworker that's calling me after hours, or, it's my neighbor getting mad at me or whatever. I'm just making up things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just everything I felt like I defaulted to the victim, just being like, okay, my circumstances and everything around me are making me depressed. But at the end of the day, like I just realized that everything that I was doing in my life, the people pleasing, you know, the the burnout, the not taking breaks, the like not really choosing my life and what I wanted to do. I was just doing what other people told me, checked all the boxes, and I still was so unhappy. And
Yeah.
so it's just something that's so important to me, and so important for me to share this with other women, because I it's crazy too that ever since I decided to pivot my business, like I've just had friends and networking contacts and potential clients reach out to me, and just they're going through exactly what I went through. It's like who I was 3 years ago. And
Yeah.
so it's just been such an amazing experience to just see that, you know, that, and I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it just feels like I feel like I was in a place of just complete misalignment. And now everything feels aligned. And, and it's because, I did all of that work, but also, and I think, and you probably can speak to this too, Angie. I just feel like in the coaching space, a lot of the missing piece for most coaches is helping people connect with their intuition. Because, like I said, you can go to a coach and they can have every framework in the book. And it's like you still should be picking and choosing what feels good to you and not just follow their premeditated, structure of whatever they want to get you to, right?
Yeah. I feel like I was so fortunate because the first coach I ever hired,
Uh-huh.
um, her name is Julie Ciardi. I'll totally give her a shout out here because she changed
Right.
my life. And
Yeah.
when I first hired her on, I wanted to grow my direct sales business. That's who she was marketing to. She was a business coach.
Uh-huh.
But then once I was like inside her doors, right? Like on the surface, she was a business coach, but once you got in, it was all about tapping into your intuition and trusting yourself and
Yeah.
taking full responsibility for your all of your results in life. And I was like, whoa, like I have not
Yeah.
experienced life like this. Like, wait, what?
Uh-huh.
I'm unhappy. That's my fault. Wait
Yeah.
a minute. No, it's society, that you were saying all the boxes. Society
Uh-huh.
teaches us that all the solutions are out there somewhere. Google it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ask a doctor, ask a therapist, it's out there and it isn't. That happiness is in us. So
Right.
yeah, I got lucky right out of the gate. And then my second coach, Julie became a human design coach. I still work with her many years later. And then my second coach was another human design coach that's all about intuition and tapping into your gold. So yeah, I was
Right.
lucky. And right away, my first coach said, turn off all social media, like stay out of everything because that clutter won't help you grow. It won't help you
Uh,
grow internally. It won't help you serve other this
I
6 months ago.
just learned that.
Well, and Amber, so you had asked me to pull up your design, your son's designs. We'll talk about that, but
Uh-huh.
so I'm staring at your design. I'm looking at you, looking at your design, and it's wild how your story so perfectly matches what's in there, right?
Mhm.
Like when you felt that burnout, well, you're a generator and you weren't doing things that you loved. A generator has
Right.
to do work they love, and you weren't.
Mhm.
And your body was like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this. So I know you said you know a little bit, but did you know that all four of your gates in your incarnation cross or your life's work are all in the G center, which is our center for love and direction. So
Mm.
the most important gates that you are here. It's like this is your life's purpose, is all about the direction you're going in and loving yourself.
Yeah,
And so, like, as you were
I
describing
love it.
trauma and like
Mhm.
figuring out what that meant for you, of course, you had to go through that really hard thing to
Yeah,
learn. I mean, I'm so sorry you had to go through those traumas, but you kind of had to
yeah,
really understand what your life's purpose is. And it's
right.
all about direction. And so now you becoming a coach is just like, of course you are. Yeah, it was really fun
Yes, I love
looking at your
that.
mind. Yeah. Oh, how fun. Well, oh my goodness, what a thank you for sharing your story. And I know you said you got a little teary-eyed there for a bit, but right, like this is real stuff and we're humans
Right,
experiencing human things and you're so right when we're trying so hard to fit into somebody else's box or when we're trying to make our kids fit into our
right.
box, which we don't know. We're you and I are learning better, right? But
Yeah,
we weren't raised that way necessarily. We were raised to, your kids need to be well behaved. They need to follow the rules. They need to respect adults, right? These are things that we were raised with and we turned out all right. That's what people say. Well, but did we? Right?
right,
Our whole generation has um and generations before us turned out so misaligned
right.
and
Yeah.
settling, which
Uh-huh.
creates a lot of burnout. Oh, so I'd love to hear more about your little guy and yeah, because you had said his journey started pretty scary probably for him too, for you and for him. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you wanted to share, I mean, it is a parenting
Yeah.
podcast.
Well, I do feel like it would be good to give you a little bit more context with him. So, when I was pregnant with him, like obviously I was excited. But my pregnancy was very physically and mentally challenging. I do feel like I had prenatal depression. I've kind of looked into that a little bit after, like post trauma and post healing. But yeah, I just had it really rough. So I ended up laboring for 24 hours and then I had a C-section. And I actually healed pretty well physically after that. But and it's so hard because from, having him up until probably 9 months postpartum, I for sure had postpartum depression. But I was working in my business part time, but, and I've told my husband this sometimes, it's hard for me to look at baby pictures because I just didn't enjoy that time. Like, and it's so hard to like look back on that time and just feel like I wanted to connect with him so much, but I was like barely holding on by a thread. And so it's like I was barely holding on by a thread, and I was responsible for a new human being who, you know, is completely dependent on us. And what's really crazy though is that, and I didn't get into this too much, but I grew up in a very conservative environment and also also a very conservative religion. And so it's very common in my, especially in my culture to get married young and to have a lot of kids and to be a stay-at-home mom. And so while I was with my son, I it it was really, and I don't know if we can swear on here.
Go
Is yours
ahead.
explicit?
It's not, but
Okay, no swearing. Okay. But it was just, for me, it was really hard because the hardest thing for me was, you know, I've been taught all my life that I'm supposed to be a mom and I'm supposed to like love this. But I was the most depressed and miserable I had ever been. And
Yeah.
so when I met with my therapist, he asked me what I wanted. And I was like, I can't even answer that question because, if I take my husband, my son, my family, like my upbringing, like everything out of the equation, like who am I? And I cried about that question for like 3 days and ended up deciding to go back to work. And we ended up putting my son in daycare. And at first it was very hard. Like, as putting children into daycare for the first time is very hard. They cry. I had so much mom guilt, and he would cry, I would cry into work, and it was really hard in the beginning. But after a while, I started to get into a flow with work again, and it's almost like I came back to life and was really myself again. Like, and it just feels so weird to even think about that. But I just convinced myself and gaslit myself into just thinking, oh, I'll just be a stay-at-home mom and try and work on the side until he goes to kindergarten, and then I'll go back to work. And my therapist was like, how is that fair? Like, why is that fair that, you know, you're you're basically sacrificing your entire life for your son?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's even talking about it is so hard for me because I know how I know how people are, like the judgment around daycare and working moms and all the things. And for me, like it quite literally saved my life.
Yeah.
And I went back to corporate for a little bit and then decided to work in my business again, and now I'm here. And so it's just like everything kind of worked out. But yeah, the relationship with my son now, and this is probably what I wanted to tell you, is I've, I've grown so much more of an appreciation for him as he's gotten older. And that he's not so dependent on me and we can communicate and he loves to snuggle, like
Yeah.
he's just at the age where, you know, all the time that I spend with him, I really enjoy it. But there are, because he is a toddler, I feel like him and I do clash a little bit sometimes. Just because, he has needs and he wants to spend time with me. But I, sometimes struggle with feeling like I'm meeting his needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so maybe you know this already, but toddlers, children's auras don't
Uh-huh.
fully develop until they're about 7 years old. And so they up until that point, they really rely on our aura to help them feel safe and protected and connected. Um,
Yes.
which can be hard for us when we have other priorities, we have other things to do. And
Yeah.
I said I was going to peek at his chart a little bit. And do you know anything about his chart?
So he's a projector,
Yeah.
and my husband and I are generators,
Yeah. Yeah. And so
which is so hilarious to me because I'm like, my husband and I just sit together and we're just like, what was that? Like we just
yeah.
look at each other, and I just realized that his energy type is just completely different than ours.
Yeah.
So,
And his needs are so different. And in particular, right? So his aura is still developing, but that projector aura type. So both of my kids are project. I'm a generator. Both of my kids are projectors, and my son is 19, my daughter is 23 now, and and growing up, well, my son didn't join our family till he was 5, and that projectorness was really clear. I didn't know anything about it then, but looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh. Um, but that projector aura type has this ability to like pierce into your heart, which is actually where your life's work is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your son has this ability to like get right in your heart in ways that you might not be ready for or expecting or wanting in that moment. As he gets older, teaching him phrases like, I have an idea. Do you want to hear about it? Because that projector type really needs to be invited to be well received by us generators. Otherwise, it feels a little bit like a stab in the heart. Like, oh, I wait, what did you say? Or what? It can feel a little off-putting when we're not expecting it. And the other thing that I also found really interesting, so when you put two charts together, it's called a connection chart, or there's probably another name for it. But I often look to see what center, if any, remain open. And with you and your little guy, the center that remains open is the will center, which is where we hold our self-worth. And what that tells me is that your relationship with your son is all about seeing your value in yourself, seeing the value in him seeing the value in himself. Like your life, that throughout life, the two of you are going to keep learning about value, self-worth through your energy with each other, which can be really hard sometimes. That will center is like the highest area of shadows. When we look at like where shadows are, it's the hardest one. So, um, not that that means a bad thing about your relationship, but it's not surprising that you're like, sometimes it's just so hard. Yeah, probably. Because he has that projector energy, which yeah, it can be challenging, but it's also such a beautiful gift. I
Yeah.
my one coach told me that I think she said she started when her daughter was like 3 or 4. She started asking her daughter, she said we would play this little game, and it was, what is something that you know about so and so that they don't know about themselves? Like, oh, what's something you know about grandpa that he doesn't know about himself? And she said it's mind blowing what her daughter knows that other people don't know, because she has that gift of really being able to see in others. And so helping to build that skill in him will be really empowering for him.
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, what you were saying about him like trying to pierce my heart. So I have noticed that even as a toddler, like when I am in my head and not like leaning into my intuition, right? And I'm just in a heady place or tired or whatever, like that is when he's being the most needy, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense to me that because, like, this morning, and we touched a little bit early on about social media, but I finally got all of my apps off of my phone and only have my passwords on my desktop. And it's because I just felt like I was ignoring him, like when I was just scrolling on my phone, right?
Yeah.
And this morning, after breakfast, I was like, "Hey, bud, do you want to go snuggle on the couch?" And he's like, "Okay." And we just sat and played with his trucks, and he loved it, right? And he's so happy to just have like any time with me. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think that's a good reminder for me to just like, and I know this, but when I'm listening to my intuition and I feel like I'm, in a good, when I'm emotionally in a good place and I'm trending in the right direction and happy myself, I just feel like the rest of my family also is, but it's when, my husband's upset or I'm upset that it kind of just like throws everything off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really helpful information. So, thank you.
Yeah. When you think about it too, right? So I was saying that that will center where you hold self-worth is your this it's like your sandbox with your son. It is where you will play and learn with him.
Yeah.
And you had said, like you said, when I get up all up in my head and in my headspace, you said, then he's like needy, right?
Right.
Of course he is, because when you're not aligned and you're disconnected with yourself, he's questioning his value. He's
Yeah.
feeling that energy and questioning, like, wait, do I still matter? Like, what happened? What happened here? Like, that energy changed with mom and I because he is
Yeah.
in your aura. And so, um, continuing to do this work that you're doing on yourself and that alignment is, it's
Yeah.
what he needs from you. It's what all of our kids need from us. This is why I do what I do, because um we our kids need us to shift. They need us to
Right.
do better
Yeah.
than we've been doing, than previous generations have been doing. It doesn't even mean that we have been bad parents or our parents were bad parents, but our kids, as the energy is shifting, so are the needs of our kids too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You bringing up like generations and stuff like that, like just being better. I just I just feel like something that I had to really break out of and learn and is just being basically trying to pander to everybody else's emotions.
Hmm.
And I feel like since I was the oldest daughter as well, like one of the oldest daughters, like I just always felt this responsibility to make sure everybody was like doing okay and happy and whatever. And I even find myself doing this as an adult. Like if somebody's upset, like I'll just kind of jump in and like try and like play savior or whatever. And I'm just learning that I am responsible for my emotions. And it's my responsibility to find my joy in this life. And everybody, if I'm responsible for my emotions and listening to my intuition, that I should allow others to do the same, right?
Yeah.
And I need to trust in them that they can monitor their emotions and their guidance systems and not feel like that those energies are kind of blurred, right?
Yeah.
And so I just really and I just am so terrified I'm going to traumatize my kid. But I never want him to feel responsible to like make mommy happy or make mommy feel better. Like that is my responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
never want him to feel like he's responsible for my bad mood. And obviously, I'm not perfect, right? Like, none of us are perfect, but I really just, I've done so much work on emotional regulation and just trying my hardest to, do everything I can to stay in my energy and stay, true to my intuition so that I can give from that overflow, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And there was something you were saying, but I think you're not alone, right? Like I think a lot of parents are terrified of traumatizing our kids because we as adults, you were saying like I had a good upbringing, but there
Yeah.
were, even like I've known you for an hour, right? Or not
Yeah.
even yet. And there are pieces about your story about you saying like, you know, they put me in the box. I was supposed to do what they do. And when you say those words, I think, just imagine, Amber, if when you were little and your parents were like, oh, we've got a generator, we've got to teach her to tap into her sacral. We don't know what's
Right.
best for her. Her sacral knows what's best for her. And she is on a mission. Her purpose on this planet is to learn about self-love and then share that with others.
Right.
right? Like imagine if your parents knew that about you when you were little, right? I'm sure that you had lovely parents, have lovely parents, but this like I'm sure you can tell I'm just so passionate about like as parents, right? If we don't want to jack up our kids, this I have never found anything like my whole career I've worked with parents. I'm a speech and language pathologist. I work in early intervention. I worked in the autism field for almost 20 years, like helping parents with challenging behaviors. It's always been my jam. And I've never found anything that could tell a parent exactly why their child is responding or reacting the way that they do and what we get to do about it, right? Because all the
Right.
strategies out there are cookie cutter and they're not
Right.
about your kid, your kid's energy. Like I started recently pulling in something called mistaken motivations, which is taking your child's chart, knowing it, and then looking at how we feel about their behaviors, right? So your son's, being needy and you're already dealing with your own stuff. And instead of looking at that behavior, like he's trying to get my attention or he's trying to, whatever it is, to say like, okay, how am I feeling about his behavior? Because that gives us a cue about what his unmet energy need is. So we can
Yeah.
respond to his energy needs, not to some arbitrary behavior, right? Because, one
Right.
day he might be I don't know, kicking you. The next day he might be ripping pages out of the book. But if ultimately they're all him saying, like, I'm struggling with my self-worth, but I don't have words to tell you that, mom,
Yeah.
right? It's so wild. This pulling human
Yeah.
design into my life, my family, my work has just been wild. So I'm excited to meet another mom who's starting to do the same because this is how we don't traumatize our kids.
Right.
When we know, yeah, when we know what they need, and we're not going to get it right every time because you're right. You said we're human.
Mhm.
I still this past week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we took our granddaughter up camping, and she's a manifesting generator. I know this about her. Yes, no questions are how we get to her truth, but I didn't do that. I gave her choices. I said, do you
Yeah.
want this, this, or this? And she picked one. And I was like, all right, I said, okay, so I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I offered her the same three choices again, and she picked the same one. So I was like, got it, we're good. And she didn't eat it. And then I'm like, of course she didn't, because it wasn't right for her. If I would have just
Right.
gone through the yes, no questions of like, do you want a burger? And let her sacral respond. Do you
Yeah.
want, whatever, the next thing I brought, let her sacral
Yeah.
respond. She would have
Yeah.
answered what was right for her. That doesn't mean if she's a toddler, she may not eat her dinner anyways, but
Yeah.
I knew right away that when she just wouldn't eat, and I'm like, "Ah, dang it, Angie, you know better."
That is the one of the hardest things as a generator, and especially as a mom and a business owner. Like,
Mhm.
I was trying to explain this to my husband last night. I was just like, I am so sick. Like, I am decision fatigued. Like, I am so sick of making decisions. Like, so it's my husband and my son's birthdays this week. And so we're doing a party for my son. And my parents were like asking, what do you want me to bring? And I'm like, oh, well, I haven't even planned the menu yet. And I look at my husband, I'm like, can you just choose? And he's like,
And he can't either, right? Because he's also a generator. If your mom had said, do you want me to bring potato salad? Then your sacral could have said yes or no. But when
right.
she said, do you want me to bring? Well, where, right? I would argue that I'm not you, obviously, but I would argue that it's not decision fatigue. It's that people aren't asking you questions in the right way, that you can just
Yeah,
respond and move on, respond and move
right.
on, respond and move on. It's fatiguing when we're trying to answer with our head because our head,
Yes.
it's not its job. And then, right, and then like when we're not answering with our sacral and we're answering with our head, then our head is like, okay, so if I tell mom that I don't want her potato salad, she might be offended because she always makes her potato salad and she thinks everybody loves it, but it tastes, like our head is like, that's what fatigues us, not our sacral.
Yes. Yes. Well, yeah. And I mean, that's exactly what happened. And my husband's like, let's just do pizza again. I'm like, great, we'll just do
Yep.
pizza.
Decision made.
But yeah, yeah, it's one of the hardest things because, yeah, that is exactly me. And like with my business, and I started my podcast back in December, and I'm going to be launching a coaching program, hopefully end of summer, early fall. And so I there's just been so much like higher level decisions. And so sometimes I feel bad because by the end of the day, I'm just like, this is such a stupid thing for me to like flip out over, but
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, just make the decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
I get that. I know I often hear from my boyfriend, he's like, you're so indecisive. And I've started to say, like, actually, I'm very decisive. You're just not asking the questions the right way. Try a yes, no question. You'll see how decisive I am. And it's true. I mean, it's so true, but yeah.
I need
I
to be better at that. Now
yeah.
realizing that my husband's a generator, we should probably start doing that. Like, give us two options and then we can decide.
Yeah. And it's even like maybe you know this too, but it isn't just yes, no questions. Like you really have to answer with uh-huh and because your sacral doesn't say yes or no. It says uh-huh and And so I was trained to like warm up your sacral with silly questions. So like I would
Yeah.
say, Amber, are you wearing glasses? And you'd say, uh-huh. Are
Yeah.
you wearing a pink shirt? Uh-uh. You know, to like warm up your sacral and then slip in the like, do you want to create a new website? Uh-uh.
Right.
You know, like
Oh my gosh.
whatever it
Even
is,
thinking
right?
that, I'm just like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's brutal. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, um, and honestly, I've thought about this as well. Have you ever thought about writing like a children's book?
Is on my, I actually
Is
have
it
one.
on your list
Yes,
for
I
like
have
a
one
human
drafted.
design children's book?
You know, I'm actually putting it has like some human design elements, but they're so subtle nobody would probably know. But I'm actually putting EFT in it and the nine resiliency keys,
Okay.
because that like those three things really are the foundation of and mistake motivations are the foundation of what I do. And so, yeah, I already have it. My first draft done. I am in the process of uh acquiring an illustrator. So,
Ooh,
yeah, I'm excited.
yeah.
I spoke with a oh man, this is like going to be out on the podcast now. Somebody's going to know.
You're like, I have to do it now.
I'm definitely doing it. Yeah, kind of my first plan of an illustrator. It was like too big of a project for her. I hadn't really
Yeah.
thought, right? I'm a 2-5 profile. I just do stuff and it's easy and I just don't think twice about it. And she's like, that's a lot of pages to like, she's a painter. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that would take a long time. Maybe I'll find somebody who does digital art.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm figuring that out, but I'm glad that it worked out the way it did because I probably drafted it, I don't know, like 4 months ago.
Uh-huh.
And I have, you know, we learn as we're doing this deep inner work, we keep learning and growing. And so I've had some really great downloads in the past couple of weeks about how I want to improve it a little bit and pull in
Yeah.
some other elements. So
Uh-huh.
I'm glad it's not out in print and I've had some ideas of how to expand it. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. You need to send me your manuscript. I would
Yeah.
love to read it.
Yeah. So I'm excited. What made you ask that? That was funny.
Well, I've been thinking this forever because I was just like, is there, well, it's really just me thinking like I grew up in a very conservative household and, religious household. There's tons of children's books about that, but I'm like, there needs to be like human design. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, what books can I buy? And maybe you even know this, but what books do I need to be buying like for my child? Like, I just don't even know.
Yeah. So my I don't want to say it out loud because I'm afraid I'll say the wrong book, but let me do a little digging because um, the one coach that I work with, she reads as part of one of her trainings, she reads four kids' books. And the so there's one that she has about a reflector, one that is about a projector, generator and a manifester, but I don't want to
Okay.
tell you the wrong one. But there, so the interesting thing is, um, she doesn't think, and I don't think that the author actually is a human design specialist. But when you read the
Oh,
book, it it is so clearly about a projector, or one is so clearly about a manifester when you understand the way the auras work and the way the energy works.
yeah.
Read it and you're like, whoa, that was weird. So yeah, three of the books are by one author and then the other one is by a different author. So yeah, I'll
Okay.
dig those out and
Cool.
send them to you.
Yeah, send those to me for
And
sure.
and if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to know, feel free to message me because I'll have it figured out. I just don't want to read
Right.
the wrong name.
You can put it in the show notes too, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, so yeah, I think my first book will be really focused on the nine resiliency keys. You know,
Uh-huh.
like yeah, like as you were talking early on about trauma, I mean, that's the other huge part of my focus. It's part of my life's work is
Yeah.
seeing patterns that need to be broken and
Right.
helping people break them. And so it's just and it's been a part of my past and being an adoptive mom and a foster mom, right? Like trauma has just been I've been enveloped in it.
Right.
And so when I working with my coach and she really focuses on the nine resiliency keys and how when we can really increase our frequency, increase our energy related to those keys, it has a huge impact on how aligned we feel. And the two most important resiliency keys are lovability and self-worth. And so,
Yeah.
you know, as you were talking and you were describing your trauma and talking about depression, and of course, in my head, I'm like, I mean, I'm so sorry you went through that, but of course you went through that because you
Right.
know, with that open will center, just questioning your worth,
Mhm.
it's part of the game. And then with your life's work, just being all about self-love, it just makes so much sense that that's been your biggest area of work to work on that. So,
Yeah.
so I think our kids
Yeah.
need a book about that. And the parents
Yes.
reading the book to them need a book about that.
Yes, for sure. Well, yeah, the whole trauma thing, like I thought about this so many times and I'm just like where would I be had I not gone through that? And there has just and I know you know this about trauma, but when you go through trauma, it's like everything about your reality is turned upside down. Like I looked at the world like in black and white, and now it's like full color, right? It's like I lived a certain way, and then, trauma changed me, and then, obviously I had to do the work to get out of that headspace. But now it's just like I could just go on and on about everything that's changed in me since then and everything that's transpired since. And even also having a child, like I just feel like, I'm just a completely different person. Like obviously I'm still Amber, like I'm still me, but what used to be important to me, isn't. And yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, trauma is a gift. And I've talked about this in my podcast that it's a complete gift because it just illuminates the parts of yourself that need to be addressed, right? And that need to be looked at with, tender love and care, but also critically, like, is this is this serving me anymore? And if it's not, then we just have to let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's so
absolutely.
hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it is hard, but I hope what the listeners are gathering from this discussion with you and I today is that healing through trauma can be so incredibly hard, but there's so many different ways to approach it too. And so if what
Yes.
you're doing isn't working for you, take a step back and,
Yes.
look like broaden your perspective a little to see other options because the route
Hmm.
that you took different than perhaps the traditional route. The route that I took very different than the traditional route. Like I
Hmm.
ended up human design and EFT were my solution to trauma, and therapy was not for me
Yeah.
at all. My life will never be the same. I can't ever be that same human that I was before. You can't ever be that same human you were before.
Yeah.
And then because we're doing this work that we're doing, not only on ourselves, but then on our kids, grandkids, the clients who serve, right? Like we're changing the DNA that future generations are getting because we are shifting the way that we're showing up. This stuff matters.
Right. Yeah. Well, the other thing I was going to say too is since I've gone through trauma, I did end up doing trauma specific therapy, which I didn't know there was a difference between like EMDR, ART slash talk therapy because, and I just learned this, but if you go to a talk therapist to talk about your trauma, it's going to make it worse
Yeah.
because you don't have the tools yet. And
Yeah.
so there's just so many variables of, and I love what you said, how, and I feel like, you bringing up how, human design healed you. I feel like, you know, reconnecting with myself and spirituality 100% was kind of like that last check mark, right? Because it's like, I kind of got through the logical side, working through my emotions, my, rewiring my brain, all of the scientific logical part, but I needed that spiritual piece to kind of like pull me outside of myself and look at it from a bigger picture. So
Yeah.
I'm so happy that it found you as well because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just has been life changing. So,
Yeah. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it this way, but I think that's why my tool ended up being human design is because it gave me the words to heal the thoughts and the feelings along with spirituality, which, you were
yeah,
talking about being raised in a specific religion, but I felt like abandoned, right? Like I
yeah,
had no religion to follow. Not that there wasn't any in my life, but none of them resonated with me. And
yeah,
so I knew there was something bigger, but I had no idea. I had no words to put to it. And understanding human design, it just made so much sense to me because I was like, it isn't like it is the science of differentiation, but it also pulls in spirituality and it shows, like how your soul is connected with all of these things that you're experiencing in your life. They're not these like separate things. And so to me, that's why I fell in love with it, is that it's this like beautiful combination of all of the things that I needed to heal.
yeah. Well, and going off of that, what's crazy about human design is you read your chart or someone reads it to you and explains it, and you're just like, that's crazy. Like, how do you know me that well?
Yeah.
But what's great about it is that we can apply it in our own way, right?
Mhm.
And whereas I feel like, these strict religious structures, it's like there is a specific formula. Like everybody must check all of these boxes, right?
Mhm.
Whereas
Yeah.
with human design, it's just like, yes, like here's a loose structure, but use it how you need it, right? And
Yeah.
use it and don't use it to against anybody, right?
Hmm.
Use it as a tool, but not like a finite, like everybody has to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Amber, I could talk with you forever, but I do think
Well,
for the
you're going
sake
to
of the
come on my
listeners, I
podcast so
know
we
I'm
can
so
talk
excited.
again.
Yes, I can't wait. Um, and so as we wrap up though, because I do want to make sure we're respectful of the listeners' time,
Yeah.
if there were one tip that you would want to leave with the listeners about, yeah, one tip that you would leave with them, something practical that they can put into practice.
Yeah. So, the tip that's coming to me right now is so when I went through my trauma, childbirth trauma with my son, I started taking walks outside. And my doctor was like, you need to go outside. It will help with your healing. Like, go on walks with your baby every day. But that pretty much evolved into me going outside every single day and reconnecting with myself and the universe. And it has been absolutely game changing for me because not only does it set me off on a positive and joyful foot in the morning, I'm also able to have like any residual anxieties or fears or frustrations just really just completely fleshed out because whenever I communicate with, my higher self, my soul, the universe, whatever, they're always like it's always just a sound calming peaceful that like everything is going to be okay and everything is going to work out. Everything is working for your favor. The world is here for your favor. And so my and I tell this all the time to my listeners is if you can get outside or on a drive, really just away from work and home or where you spend the most time, if you can get out and it's ideally in nature or on a drive or whatever, yoga, whatever spiritual, religious, or, you know, scientific practice that you feel helps you, do it every single day to reconnect with yourself. And I promise that things will start to look up in your life because I just feel like slowly, those 20 minutes a day outside just turned into me figuring out my purpose and why I'm here. And so, yeah, I would just encourage each of you who are listening, just take 5 to 10 minutes a day and reconnect with yourself and your intuition because it will absolutely change your life.
Oh, that was a great one. I don't think anybody shared that yet, but it I think we forget, right? We forget to set our phone down. We forget to go outside in fresh air. We forget to connect with
Right,
ourselves, with nature. So
right.
that's a good one.
Yes.
Very cool. Anything else that you like? Oh, how can people find you, connect with you?
Yes. So I am on social media. I am on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I have a podcast called Rebrand Your Life.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because you were telling me that your podcast initially started a certain way and has kind of evolved. Mine has as well.
Yeah.
So initially, I was targeting marketers and I called my podcast The Rebranded Marketer. But as I started interviewing people and as I started getting more into what has really helped me and resonated with me and the people that have approached me and talked to me about the podcast and everything, I just realized I'm just like, this message is universal. Like, it's not just for women, it's for men as well. Like, we all need to reconnect with our intuition. And so yeah, I typically, have guests on and share their stories and talk about how their intuition has guided their lives. And then, of course, I'm on there, talking about, all the things that have helped me and have helped other people. And so, yeah, I'd love to have you over on my podcast as well.
I would love that. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, it was such a pleasure talking with you, Amber, and yeah, we will talk soon.
Yes. Thank you so much. It was so great to be here.